Relax, the keyboard is off, the press box is closed, and the mic is just getting warmed up as the Guardian of the Blue Paint turned writer is about to enlighten us. The show where the writer is fresh off the presses and the ink is not dry. For this week's show, who's staying and who's going? And can we end the Flyers nepotism? Welcome to the Hockey Writers Inc. Join Lance and Steel as we bring you all the latest on the Flyers.
Hi guys, welcome to another edition of the Hockey Writers Inc. As always, I'm your host, Lance Green.
And I'm your co-host, SteelFlyers. And Lance, my boy, I think we got a very, very special guest sitting in here, don't we?
I believe so.
Oh boy, how about that, folks? The Great Pearlo Wisdom. How you doing, my man?
Great. Doing fantastic, my friend.
Oh, man. Oh, my gosh. I can't wait to
I love the Whalers hat. I love that.
See, I told you you'd like that, right? I told you.
Sporting the Whalers cap in the Seattle apartment.
Yeah,
it's
man.
Nice.
We're all good. We're all and Lance with the vintage goalie equipment back there.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Coopers, right? Yeah, man. Got it all
that's when
going
pads,
on, right?
That's when pads were pads, eh?
That's right. They don't stack them anymore like that anymore, right?
No.
Every once in a while you see it, and the commentators lose their minds every time you see some goaltenders stack their pads.
Pearlo, thanks for hopping on with us, man. We got a very special show here. We wanted to bring Pearlo on here because in this very special episode this week, who's staying and who is going? And can we end the Flyers nepotism? And I got to tell you something now, Lance, you put out two really fantastic articles that we're going to get into, obviously, here in the show. And it's going to correlate exactly with the thoughts of our great prognosticator, the great and wonderful Pearlo Wisdom. So wanted to get Pearlo's take because Pearlo is not only a great fan of the Flyers, but he's also does a lot of great things about the NHL on his great show, the Pearlo Wisdom Show, where he covers the entire NHL. And he is just a fount of knowledge. I mean, we don't call him the prognosticator for nothing, you know what I mean? So thank you very much for hopping on and joining us, man. And we're going to get into two of the great articles here from Lance. So thanks, Pearlo, for hopping on, buddy.
No problems, my friend. I've always loved doing this with you guys. I look forward to it.
Awesome sauce, man. All right, here we go. All right, so article number 1, posted on Flyers Nitty Gritty website just the other day. Which Flyers restricted free agents should stay and which should go? And it does appear that the writer extraordinaire and Steele are both on the same page, or at least the same wavelength. And I believe that Pearlo is going to be on the same wavelength when it comes to the players that we feel should stay and who should be gone. Lance, again, I have to say, very perfectly point out just who is who in this article. And let's start off with the fact that you talk about Fletcher. The very first part of the paragraph, and you mentioned about Fletcher not having any wiggle room this coming summer. And can you elaborate on that some more?
So, sure. This season is going to be a very important one. Obviously, the team did not do, or is still not playing up to par, and they're going to be drafting from the lottery this year. And saying that, they've traded away Giroux. There's virtually no star power on this team. So it's definitely going to be an interesting offseason for sure, especially with Chuck saying that he wants to just retool and snap right back into the playoff picture. And most fans don't believe that is possible. And saying that, so Chuck cannot miss this offseason. The past couple off seasons, he's missed. Last off season, he definitely went out there and he tried to pull off some moves. Some of them went well and some of them did not. And some of them, it looks like the team will be paying for quite some time. So this season, there's no no wiggle room. There's no space to mess up a move this offseason, because I think he's on a very short leash, and in my mind he should already be gone. But you know, because of injuries this season and everything else, I think he's going to be given a very short leash into next season. So,
you know, I got to tell you something. Pearlo, can you build on that? What are your thoughts on just that first part of the article addressing maybe even Fletcher's short leash, or, you know, whatever the case is for this upcoming summer for the Flyers?
Well, I mean, short leash. I mean, if a general manager got a short leash, then there should be no leash, because it doesn't make any sense to keep somebody around through a summer who's going to make serious moves that affect your organization if you're going to put them on a short leash. So my thinking is that I think he'll either stick around, or they'll remove him or move him somewhere, or something will happen. But it's a sticky situation, especially if you're evaluating what he did last year. It's kind of scary. Like I don't know how you put a general manager on a short leash. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like who's holding the leash? He's the guy. He's the guy, though, right? He's the guy you put in there to make these decisions. And could there be any bigger decisions than what's about to happen this summer for this organization? Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, I think you know, Dave Scott really mentioned it as being you know, he wanted to give him another shot, where most Philadelphia people around Philadelphia were ready to see him go, you know, before the trade deadline, so that maybe a new GM could come in, maybe a new coach could come in and evaluate his own talent before maybe the trade deadline actually happened, so the two could communicate and then make moves at that point, moving forward to who should stay and who should go. But that didn't happen. Chuck got to make the mess, and he tried to clean it up, but was pretty unsuccessful in especially what he got back for Giroux. So Giroux didn't really help that matter at all either. So
I do really like Tippett.
I do too.
I think that was an excellent pickup in that way. But,
yeah, I think Tippett was good. I think he could have gotten a little bit more, but when it's tough when Giroux was holding all the cards, and him basically saying that he only really wanted to go back there. I don't know how much, Steve, you were reading into this, but you know, I believe the rumor is the conversation was had that Giroux questioned Fletcher whether he would have an opportunity next season to come back, and Fletcher would not say yay or nay, a definite. And from what I hear, Giroux then said, "Okay, well, I'm going to shorten my list even further, and I just want to go to Florida." So that really limited his chances of, you know, bargaining tool with any other team and pitting them against each other. So
yeah, but I just want to say this about I think they still probably could have. There's a lot more guys in the Florida pipeline as far as prospects that they probably could have gotten, or at least instead of draft picks, could have gotten more of those guys instead of the draft picks. I would have thought maybe, because there's guys like Tippett that are in the Florida pipeline that are only in that buried down there because of the depth and everything that Florida currently has. Do you know what I'm saying? So the fact that Fletcher is still even employed, to me, in my mind, is when you compare him to, say, some of the other general managers that have come through Philadelphia in the last couple of years, Paul Holmgren, Ron Hexdahl, whatever, I think that Fletcher has done more to perpetuate the disservice of every other guy in front of him or behind him. Okay? He has not gotten Philadelphia out of cap purgatory. He's made it worse. He's not brought in any top tier talent at all. He hasn't improved this team. In fact, everything that Chuck has done has perpetually made this team Minnesota Wild 2 and worse. Okay, even with the same line of coaching, the same line of assistant coaches, some players. You know, I mean, come on.
That's getting into the next article, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting a little ahead of us here. But
yeah, we'll talk about that in the next. So I got a few things to say about that too, but not about Chuck Fletcher. To me, it's a systematic problem, systemic problem that goes above all of.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
Who picked all these guys, right?
Exactly. I'm with you. No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Sooner or later, somebody has to put up their hand and say, "Yeah, I did all that. I'm the one that selected all these general managers. I'm the one that did all of this. I'm the one that said, this is the mandate for this team to my general manager to do. I'm the one that did that."
Yeah.
So,
well,
somebody do that. I'd like to see somebody do that. Then maybe they could see some change in Philadelphia.
Do you see? This is why we have to bring in the great prognosticator, man, because he has always got it thinking, man. That's not just a Whalers cap. That's the thinking cap. That's the Pearlo Wisdom cap right there. It's got a W on there for wisdom, not Whalers. All right. So the next name on the list in this article, past Fletcher, but is actually the first name on the list of players of who we think should stay and go. And we've all mentioned him, and Owen Tippett is the trade acquisition, obviously, that the Flyers got from Giroux for Giroux from Florida. And I have to say, I have been impressed with his game since he's been in the Flyers. He's been one of the better offensive forces out there. Then again, that's not a tough feat. Yeah. That's not a tough feat to top on a nightly basis, seeing as how Philadelphia's kind of has a lack of any kind of real star power, really. I mean, I'm not trying to put anything down against Cam Atkinson or anything like that, but it's not like they're skating around with a Draisaitl, or they're skating around with a Gaudreau, or they're skating around with a, you know what I mean? They're just not skating around with those guys, you know what I mean? So let's start with you, Pearlo. What is your opinion on Owen Tippett?
I loved him in Florida. I loved him when he was in Florida. He was buried there, understandably so. I mean, their lineup is stacked with Reinhart and, Huberdeau, and I mean, just the list goes on there with forwards. It's just, what are you going to do, right? Like, he was a patient guy. It was quite obvious he was going to be moved on from. But when you saw that guy shoot, he's got a shot. He's a crazy, crazy good shot.
Yeah.
Put him in the right situation and let him blossom here. I could easily see him being a 30-goal scorer. And there's a lot of other aspects to his game that he actually was able to improve because he played so low in the lineup there. He had to learn, and I think he did well. He didn't have to, I guess, but I think he did well to learn how to do the little things, which you have to do down in those bottom lines, which is really why I like prospects to have to work their way up. I've mentioned that several times here. And he had to work his way up there. Never was able to get to the jump, but we talk about how Philadelphia didn't have much choice with Giroux, that apparently it was just Florida he could go to. One thing I will, if I'm going to give Chuck Fletcher some credit there, that getting Tippett is I think is going to look good. I mean, it's not going to look Giroux good, but it's a good thing.
You were never going to get that.
Right. Yeah. And, you get the draft pick and whatever, but I think he's going to do very, very well there. However, you got to find somebody to feed him the puck. That's
and a coach and a system to put him in.
Yeah, but certainly you got to find somebody to feed him the puck.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So, and I don't see like Hayes is a decent passer, but his overall game is a grinding out center game that I love. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if that's going to sit very well with Tippett. Like, it's going to work very well with Tippett.
Right.
Couturier is an underrated passer. I think you got to play him with Coots when he comes back.
I agree.
And then, but they need more up the middle there, as we know, if they're going to do something. Otherwise, I think Tippett is a good building block on the wing. If you're going to do a proper rebuild, that was a nice move. So I like him a lot.
Okay. And Lance, you mentioned him in the article, and so your thoughts.
For sure. I've been big on Tippett since the time he was drafted by Florida back in 2017.
Yeah.
Big scorer for Minnesota Steelheads in the OHL. I mean, he's had an NHL shot, like, Pearlo said, since then, really. He came into the league being able to shoot at a very high level. But he does a couple of things. He needs to work on a couple of things. He needs to work on his stick handling with the puck. He does a lot off the puck, and by those hockey terms means he's able to get in those areas and find those shooting lanes behind the defense and all that very well, and set himself up for a good quality shot. And that's really what the Flyers needed. They needed a shooter. They had a bunch of, pass first guys or, cheap rebound guys, but they don't have a A1 shooter. And Tippett is that in my mind.
Yeah.
But like Pearlo said, you can't just stick him with anybody. You need to give him somebody that's going to be able to feed him the puck. And unfortunately, you traded away Voracek, and now you traded away Giroux, who both excelled in that area. But in the future, I see Owen is really that guy. Like I said, I can see him 20, 25, 30 goals if you get him the right person to play with.
Okay.
He didn't look great with Morgan Frost. He stepped his game up once he got to play with Hayes a little bit, made some goals, was able to capitalize. Even though he was still getting those chances before playing with other players, he was able to capitalize because they were crisp passes coming from Hayes. They were on the ice, just in his wheelhouse. And, I really think, the Flyers, obviously they just traded for him. They're not going to let him walk. For nothing or not match a deal if somebody were to put one in for him elsewhere. So I really see him, excelling his game here in Philadelphia now that he's going to be gifted the opportunity of more ice time and more minutes. In my mind, he's not playing a third or fourth line role like he was with Florida. Now he's going to be probably in the top six because they don't have that shooter. They need that shooter in their life. So
I'm with you. I've liked Owen Tippett since he's been with the Flyers. I liked him as well when he was playing with the Steelheads. Watching him play for them, and then wishing he could have been drafted by the Flyers, but obviously that wasn't the case. Aforementioned Morgan Frost.
Yeah.
Look, all I have to say is he on waivers yet? And then Lance.
I really hate even bringing this guy up because most of Philadelphia fans still are, believing in this guy that he's going to be something that he's not. He was at the time he was drafted a very capable scorer. 200 plus seasons, 100 plus point seasons in juniors, and since he's turned pro, it's 5 or 6 years since he's been drafted. He's still fairly young, in his early 20s, but for a first round draft pick, you just want to see more by now. And I don't think he's going to be a number one center. He's not going to be a number two center. I think Hayes is a number 3 center. I don't think he's a number 2, but I don't think Frost is going to bump him out of that number 2 spot. And then you look at a guy then you have to start thinking, well, does he bring the same aspects of a Scott Lawton? And I don't think he does either. Scott Lawton is tremendous in the forecheck. He gets in the dirty areas. He lays hits. He does all those little things that you want a third line center to do. He's very versatile. He can play wing. He can play center. He can play up and down the lineup as needed. And Frost has shown he can't to this point. Is it worth signing him back? Sure, you could sign him back for fairly cheap, but at this point, why? When I wrote this, I think he had 3 goals in 44 games this season, and he's a -15. And most people were trying to defend him when I said that and said, well, he's just getting it going now. Well, 3 goals in 44 games isn't exactly getting it going, especially when he's had every opportunity this year with both Hayes and Couturier out for extended periods of time. I at this point, I'd rather just package him up with somebody to try to maybe get a second-round pick and maybe go out and get a Furcus or somebody like that in the second round in the draft, another pure shooter like Tippett.
Okay, Pearlo, what do you think about Frost?
Never liked him. Didn't like him in junior. Didn't know why they drafted him. He was third. He should have been a third rounder as far as I was concerned. Yeah. Really the reason why I didn't like him, honestly, he's actually pretty tough for how light he is. Because the fact that he can play in the NHL is pretty good. Yeah. But when I hear rumors about a guy can't put on weight, I'm not touching that guy. Not till the third round or something like that. And that was what I heard back then. Going to
stay. Yeah.
He wasn't putting on weight. It's not his fault. I think he'd be a pretty good player if he could gain about 20 pounds. He's 5'11". He's to 170, 5'11" to play in the NHL. You better have a crap load of skill to go with that. And he doesn't. No, he didn't at the time. So I understand he had speed. He was very fast. He does have a really good stick, but you got to get into the spots. And in junior he could because he had enough speed to do it. But if you don't have the size he didn't have the size to do it in the NHL. He can't get to the spots. He's a gamer. I mean, you got to love the kid for taking the abuse that he does and keeping on going because he does. But it doesn't mean you're an NHL player, and he's not. And I just can't see how he's ever going to be, to tell you the honest truth. So I didn't like the pick when it happened. And so.
All right. So now
I like this guy still.
See, man, I'm telling you, dude. I'm telling you, man. He's on the same page. Look. All right, now let's get into one that I'm pretty sure we're all going to pretty much agree on this one as well too, and that is Zach Mcewen. And we're gonna let Pearlo take the lead on this one here because Pearlo, look, we know and love your insight onto players, and we know that you love those character / energy type guys, and we're talking about Zach Mcewen. Stay or go?
Either or. Either one's fine. He's cheap. I mean, he protects his teammates. I liked him in Vancouver. The thing about Zach Mcewen, he's never going to probably get higher than a fourth line guy, right? Like, that's what he's going to be. You need toughness in and out of the lineup. Play him when you need toughness. Don't play him when you don't stuff like that. Yeah. He's probably going to be a journeyman guy. He probably works hard at his craft and tries to become the best. From all I've heard anyways, he tries to become the best he can be, and maybe later on in his career as he goes, he can turn it into something like Thompson did, right? He can become something that is a valuable fourth liner. I wouldn't call him a valuable fourth liner right now. I'd call him a fourth liner, like a guy, a dime a dozen guy you can pick up mostly anywhere.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if they were really going to do rebuild, I would keep them to protect the kids, because it is hard to find guys that are willing anymore in this game to do what he does, and he's willing to protect the young players and stuff like that. So for that, I don't mind. I keep him. He's like league minimum, isn't he? I hope he's making league minimum. So
something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, cool. I'm with you on that. I'm all down with Zach. I I I think he would be a. I like him down there on that fourth line. Like I would like to see him with Lawton. I think that would be a good fourth line with Lawton at center and him on one of the wings. You know what I mean? And then you can pick somebody to be on the other wing on the fourth line. You know what I mean? You're going to have to get somebody, but I would like to see him with Lawton, and I think that would be a good matchup because I think he brings that energy and he brings that kind of protection, but he also is able to relatively skate, and he's got a nose for putting the puck in. You know what I mean? So I'm
Or a
with you.
fourth
All
liner is
right.
not bad, yeah.
What's that?
Or a fourth liner, you can put.
That's what I mean. Yeah, fourth liner. Right. Okay. Lance.
Similar. I mean, he is what he is. He knows what he is at the same time. He is a Philadelphia, guy through and through already. I think he's accepted his role here in Philadelphia, and he does it well. He strapped the gloves over 10 times to protect his teammates. He knows he can do that as well to energize the crowd and his team when they're down by a goal late or something. And he's going to protect those young guys. Like, Pearlo said, we got a lot of youth coming in here. And he's going to be able to step up and do that. He finishes his checks,
Mm-hmm.
all stuff that I love that part of the game, and I think it suits a playoff atmosphere. Regular season isn't quite as rough and tough as it used to be, but come playoff time, you need guys like this to wear down the opposition in a seventh game series. Exactly. And I think from sources close to him that have told me he really likes it here in Philly. He really appreciates them.
Yeah.
He really quite a few losses this season, but for the fans have taken to him. And they love him. They love his blue collar effort. Every game, he never takes a game off. So he just fits the Flyers' needs right now for that role. And like you said, he should come cheap. And he likes the town. He likes the team because they were willing to give him a shot. So yeah. I think he'd be willing to re-sign here in Philly. And I think it'd be a good move for both him and the team.
Yep, I'm with you on that for sure. Okay. So there's a couple more names here on the list, and I want to the next one that we're going to talk about is Wade Allison. Okay. And I have to tell you, this just gets tougher and tougher here, man. This list that you put together, Lance, just it's harder and harder to. I mean, we've decided that we like Tippett. We decided that Frost can go. We like either Zach Mcewen can go or stay. Either way, we're kind of okay on that one. What do you guys think about Wade Allison? I'm going to start with you, Lance, on this one.
Well, it's a tough one. I mean, the kid's got, orange and black running through his blood. He's a tough as nails kid. When it comes to the way the style he plays, he's 24 years old. He came up through Western Michigan, with the Broncos. But he ended up fighting a guy that was 6'9" in preseason, and bloodied him up. You can watch the video on the thing. So, he's got scoring ability. He reminds me a lot of Mike Richards in my mind in that style of play. He has
speed too, a little bit.
He's got some speed. He can score and stuff like that. But the big thing on him is injury. He's injury prone. I mean, since he's came and turned pro, he's been hurt a couple of times every year.
Like 80% of his pro time, he's been on the injured reserve.
And that's no different from his time is 3 or 4 years in the NCAA. Every season he was injured. I mean, I think he averaged only 26 games per season in the NCAA because he was hurt every single year. I mean, the guy's just got, if he has, bad luck, he doesn't have any at all. it's just it's crazy because the kids got talent, the kids nice, but I wouldn't sign him back. I mean, it's basically just taking up a roster spot. He looks good on paper, but what good is he really doing if he's
Not available.
up in the bleachers or up in the rafters with me in a suit and tie because he's injured every game.
Yep. Pearlo.
I love the guy. I do. Almost like a great player we had here in Philly before, one of the greatest. And never listened, never learned. Sometimes you can be too aggressive.
Yeah.
And that's what Allison's problem is.
Yeah.
You can't play like that all the time in the NHL. And I don't know how you harness this kid, but if you could, you got a guy that could be a fantastic, I don't even know.
Yeah.
He puts himself at a position to hit people too much. He puts himself in a position to get hurt too much. That's why he gets hurt so much. The guy is a loose cannon. I love him. I mean, I'd rather have somebody too aggressive and try to harness him back other than somebody like Frost. Not that I don't think Frost would be aggressive if he could. Okay, I think he would, but he can't. But he can, but he's got to be harnessed back. And I guess I'm with Lance. If you can't harness the guy back, he's just going to be a walking injury. I'm sorry, but he's being dumb. I'm not going to call him dumb, but he's being dumb. I think it's immaturity, where some of these guys just think that if they go out and be the big guy to get the big hit and that's what's going to keep them here. But in all honesty, that kid's got some talent, man.
Yeah.
And if he can learn to harness his game and play a little better defensively, I don't think he'll ever be great at it, but a little better defensively and not be over aggressive in certain areas, which I think is a big task to ask, considering where he's at, he could be a very, very good player. I'll tell you what, if Philadelphia let him go, if I was a general manager out there, I'd give him a shot to keep on trying with him.
See, this is what I think the other issue is, and Lance, you wrote an article about this, and we had it on the show. We talked about the medical staff being a major failure for Philadelphia, and then we also talked about how we felt that their development coaching staff was a major failure for Philadelphia. Okay, yeah. And this, I think, is a direct result of those two particular things being major failures in the Philadelphia Flyers. And that is the fact that this kid, okay, who, if he would have had some good coaching to wrangle him in, right? And then if we would have had, and if we would have had medical staff that didn't, for whatever reason, players seem to have the same type injuries year after year, list goes on and on of players that have the same injuries for the Flyers, core muscle and, knees. And, I'm not saying that other teams don't have it, but it just seems like Philadelphia always just seems like they have core muscle issues and soft tissue injuries that are the result of either not training, not having the right, coaching regimes for your
strength and conditioning.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't say it, so thank you. Yes, so I think those areas all point to the failures of Philadelphia all throughout their entire development / coaching, because there are so many players that have come into the Philadelphia Flyers system in the last 10 years. Okay. That, like, perfect example is Couturier. He was the number 1 draft pick. He was putting up perennially 100 points in juniors. He comes to Philadelphia, and now he's a Selke award-winning forward, the best defensive forward. No. Why do you have to change him? Why can't you just bring him in and let him be the kind of player that he was, that he should be? Why do you have to put Giroux constantly on the wing instead of leaving him play in the center, which is what his natural position was, because you didn't get guys or get talent in here enough to keep him in center. You had to put him on the wing, right? Or because of injuries, or because of, I mean, there's so many factors that go into why there's such a long list of players that have come into the Flyers that were so successful when they were in juniors, get to the Flyers, completely drop off, then they leave the Flyers, get their name on the cup, or become very successful on other teams, or do very well once they get out of the Philadelphia Flyers system. I'll give you a perfect example. Nicholas Abe-Kubel, okay, who was traded away from the Philadelphia Flyers just this year, is having a great season in Colorado because they are using him correctly.
But not only that, I don't think he ever really had a bad season in Philadelphia. I thought he was great. I loved him. I didn't know why he wasn't getting more action than he was. I don't get it.
But, well, they were playing him on the wrong side, first off. Philly was. And then they were trying to make him be a fourth-line banger, when he through his juniors and everything like that, he was a scorer. He could put the puck. He could put the puck in the net, and he was never really given a chance to do that in Philly.
But I mean, he's playing the third, fourth line role in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, he's just doing it really it's well. Different because they have a first and a second line so that he has to play a third line role there. But no, I think it was totally different because Philadelphia was trying to make him be something he wasn't, and be an enforcer and a banger on the fourth line and a penalty killer when that's not his game at all.
Yeah, well, I remember, that's true. I was saying, like, why aren't they playing him higher? And to tell you the honest truth, it wasn't about what his numbers were in junior. It was what I was seeing on the ice.
Sure.
I was seeing a guy that was driving to the net. He looked like a guy
doing all the right things. Yeah.
He could play on the power play in that spot where you drive to the net, in front of the net, seemed totally willing to do it and not bad at it, but they never used him in that role. So.
That's what I mean. So I think that goes a long way in why some of these players have become failures in the Philadelphia Flyers system. And the last one the last two that I want to talk about is Isaac Radcliffe and Krill Istamantenko. Okay. And I just want to touch on these two guys briefly because I really want to get into the next article here. And Lance, just Isaac Radcliffe, yay or nay, and Krill, yay or nay?
Sure. Radcliffe, he's a big guy. He's got size, 6'6", former second-round pick, former 50-goal scorer. Same thing as we were just talking about. He's 23 years old. He's since turning pro. He hasn't developed into much at all. And he's even spoke on that in interviews, saying that, he felt with the Flyers, he gained so much more, even playing on a fourth line role with them, because he had a little bit more freedom than, what he had in the Phantoms. He wasn't growing, he felt, in his game down there. I would say let him go. At this point, it's been 4 or 5 years. If you could package him up like Frost, then so be it. Krill, I really would let him go as well. I think the organization has too much mediocre talent in net right now. You have Sandstrom there as well, who looks a little bit better, not much. But as far as Istamantenko, he's had a hip injury already that he's had to have surgery on, similar to what Niittymaki had. And for him to be so young, that's just not good to have a kid that has to have hip surgery and be a goaltender. That's just breeds problems in the future. And plus the fact that he can't find his way out of the East Coast Hockey League. So if he can't progress out of the East Coast Hockey League by this point, I would say just let him go. You have, Ivan, of course, ready to come over if they can get him out of Russia. And there's some free agents out there to be had as well. So good riddance to him as well.
Gotcha.
If I was GM.
Right. Pearlo, what do you think about Radcliffe and Krill?
Again, I mean, you just have to go back. to. Radcliffe should be better than he is.
Okay,
And
but you said
we're
the
going
key
back
word
to
there is should be.
right. We're going back to the problem here where you have. You're going back to the problem here where it's just poor player development. I can't put it any other way. That, unlike Frost, I didn't like really the draft to begin with, but Radcliffe has been. I mean, he should be better than he is. His progression has been poor. Is that because of Radcliffe? Is okay. We can always say it's because of the player, but like you said, once every player piles up here, really, either you're drafting very, very bad, or you're developing very bad, or both.
I mean, I don't think they're drafting horribly
I don't think they are.
back then, because these guys had potential. I mean, the guy was a 50-goal scorer in juniors, and he has great size. But like what the player development, like I've written before on it, is just horrid, and it needs terrible. To be. It has the same people for extended period of time now, just gifted the opportunity to keep holding on to this job, and they're doing nothing with it. They can't develop their own talent like teams like LA does when they bring in guys to the AHL. They depend on the NCAA, they depend on KHL, they depend on SHL, the Liga, to build these guys to be able to jump right to the NHL because they can't develop their own talent.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny that you mentioned that, because I want to get into this next article here, Lance, that you wrote. And, look, there's a lot of players I think that could come and go for Philadelphia. I think, quite frankly, I think there's going to be a fire sale. I'm hoping there's going to be a fire sale at the end of the season, and they make a lot of room and try to do a bunch of draft picks or try to make room for some free agents and try to free up some cap space, because Philadelphia is more than just quote unquote one or two pieces away, and you can't just retool a shipwreck. I'm sorry, you need to rebuild a shipwreck. You can't just retool it. Okay, right? So the next article that we're going to talk about is still dripping wet, as it was just posted to FlyersNittyGritty.com website today. And this article's title, Nepotism Has Run Rampant with the Flyers organization for Far Too Long. And I feel that in your usual tactful and truthful approach, Lance, that you nailed it on this one, buddy. Look, I'm not going to say that other teams don't bring in other retired players and, for jobs and stuff like that. I'm not saying that, but not nearly to the extent of the Flyers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, right. Definitely. It really dates back to, Bob Clark in a way. Mr. Snyder, the guy was very happy, obviously, what Bob Clark was able to do for the Flyers with the Broad Street Bully days. So he decided to, after he hung him up, give him the team's general manager job back in like '84, I think. And, it has...
Like, he was never coach or nothing either, right? He just went right to general manager, right?
Yeah, right to general manager. Then he left for a bit.
He went down to Florida.
Yeah, came back and, really screwed up the Lindros thing with his injury. And then, instead of getting rid of him, they just promoted him to senior vice president.
I mean, okay, so we all know it kind of started with that. Pearlo, I know you have a lot of thoughts on all of this. And look, I also agree that, and look, we're going to talk about the general managers first, or the last couple of general managers that the Flyers have had: Bobby Clark, Paul Holmgren, and Ron Hexdahl. Okay. And Ron Hexdahl being the last one that was hired by Ed Snyder. Okay. Now, look, we all know and love Mr. Snyder, and we all believe that he was one of the better owners of all of sports teams, period, drop the microphone, because not only did he care about his players, but he cared about their families, and he cared about players after they were done playing, and he cared about players long after they were done playing. You know what I mean? So as ownerships go, Ed Snyder, I would have to say, is in the top 3 as far as ownerships, families, however that goes with sports teams. I would put him in that top 3, Ed Snyder. Okay. And all the man wanted to do was win, right? And boy, did he do that to a fault. Okay. Because of who he brought in, because of the decisions that he made. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's face it. Going up to Paul Holmgren and telling him that he needs to sign a number 1 top goalie, and that number 1 top goalie is Ilya Bryzgalov, and then they write him a check for $52 million. That's a big boo-boo. I mean, I think that set the franchise back 10 years and denied Giroux a cup. Okay, so, I mean, Pearl, I want to hear what you got to say about these 3 guys and this whole situation here.
If you own a business, and Mr. Schneider was a wealthy man, I think one of the things that businessmen do differently in sports that they shouldn't is they get their heart too much involved. It's still a business. And if your heart is too much involved, your head stops moving. And you start getting too close to the people you're with, or at least if you can't separate the two. You can get close, but also be able to hurt their feelings. That's the problem. Schneider couldn't hurt people's feelings too much. There was a time when you just have to say, you know what, no, we can't go this direction anymore, or no, whatever. The other team I follow is the Edmonton Oilers. Same thing happened. Difference is the owner we have did wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm never going to win a cup here if I keep on doing this. They had Kevin Lowe, they had Craig McTavish, all the ex-guys and stuff like that. And guess what? It doesn't work. Unless it's a very specific person who is almost like, look at Sakic and Yzerman. Those guys did not bring a whole bunch of people from the past into select ones, yeah, but not just because. That's what it seems like it happened in Philly, is they were put in because. That's why. And that, I think, is what set Philadelphia back as far as it did. And it's, you know what the worst part about it is? It's hard for everybody to say. Because it's hard to say something bad about Clark or these wonderful legends of the past and stuff like that, which made it very difficult for somebody in the organization at the time to say, you know what, this isn't a good idea, So that's what I'm thinking that happened at that time. Bryzgalov, I mean, my gosh, that was a horror. Everybody in the league was like, are you freaking crazy? It's not.
Especially when you had Bob, a young
Bob, yeah. Right. I mean, look, the Flyers are still paying Bryzgalov until 2024. Right. He still gets a check from Comcast Spectacor or wherever the money's coming from. $2.4 million for the next 2 years at least, right? So what does that tell you? Okay, look, I agree that I really appreciate what Bob Clark did for the Flyers in bringing them 2 Stanley Cups. I also love how Paul Holmgren played the game. He was a Flyer, true and true. He was an orange. He bled orange and black. Okay, he gave everything up for the team, including his face, his body, everything. Okay,
oh, yeah, of course.
Right. Ron Hexdahl, same thing. That guy just had Flyers blood just running through his veins from day one. Okay, that's just how it is. That doesn't equate to being a good general manager. Now, Ron Hextall of all of these three guys is the only one I feel that has had any kind of real success, because he left the Flyers organization and went to LA, which was completely, it's like what Bob Clark did when he left and went to Florida. When Florida started up their team, Bob Clark left and was the general manager down there, right? Well, Ron Hexdahl, after he had his stint with the Flyers, left to become the assistant general manager to LA. And what did he do? He installed analytics. He did all these great things and helped make LA Kings a household name and put 2 Stanley Cups and put his name on the cup twice.
Mm-hmm.
So they looked at him and thought, all right, hey, Ron, buddy, brother, come on back, baby. Right?
Yeah.
And then they didn't want to deal with him because he was way different than what he was before. Now he was the main man, pots and pans, and I guess
they couldn't control him.
They couldn't control him, and then he wasn't marching to their drum, and then whatever. And so here we go, and it just perpetuates and perpetuates.
Lance put it really well there. I like that. That was a good way of putting it.
Right, they couldn't control him. Both Bob Clark and Paul Holmgren have moved on and hold higher esteem now, and they're president of the Flyers and senior vice president of the Flyers now, and all this stuff. Well, Ron Hexdahl was a GM that had a vision, that told you what he wanted to do with the team and told you how long it was going to take, and that you just needed to sit back and trust him, trust the process, right? But the team wasn't willing to do that. In saying that, though, I really didn't like a lot of the picks Hexdahl picked. It wasn't Hexdahl guys. Like, I thought he was going to build from the net out. He drafted Hart, but Hart's questionable in my mind still today. They haven't really gave him a defense that can really support him yet. But he was supposed to be an elite goaltender, but I really didn't see big physical players, defensive-minded players that I wanted to see out of Hexdahl. I wanted to see him rebuild from the net out. I wanted to see him really get some big, strong, physical defenders that can move the puck, but still, he went out there and he was a goaltender. He played goaltender, but he drafted guys on defense that were all offensive-minded. They were smaller. They were afraid to hit, and didn't support and didn't, play defense. Go play wing if you wanted to play. The Ghost and Sandheims and all these guys, Myers. In LA and help build, great goaltending with Quick and a laundry list of his backups that went on to become NHL starters, and then really solidify that defense and then work out, but really didn't do that. So, but I mean, same thing as Paul Holmgren. Paul Holmgren started out as a coach. He was left and then he came back. He did scouting, he did this and that, a third, and now he was gifted jobs right up the chain because of the player that he was. And same thing with Hexdahl, as Steel kind of alluded to. Hexdahl played a certain kind of style of game, even though he was a goaltender. He was very physical, very Philadelphia Flyer base. When other teams think of the Flyers, we used to be feared. And, he bounced around, had some different jobs, and eventually, rose to the top of the Flyers food chain. So, it goes on through every facet of this team. And, as Pearlo said, certain players, yes, I think Bob Clark was a decent GM. I really do. I think he weighed a lot of draft picks. He spent a lot of money on free agency and all that, but that was really what Mr. Snyder wanted him to do. The Flyers are still today the third most winning franchise in the NHL over the course of their whole existence. And that's because every season they put a team out there that could compete for a championship. Have they been that, lucky to win some since the last 30, 40 years? No, but they've been to the playoffs a bunch, and but it doesn't work in every single player. Certain players like your Yzermans and your Sakic's, know what it takes and are smart enough businessmen to really see the scouts and know who to draft. And you look at the teams that Yzerman built in Tampa, and now back home in Detroit, and what Joe's doing in Colorado. That team is solid, and he's given up a lot, but prospect wise and draft pick wise, but he's built a true contender, and you gotta really respect that. But it doesn't mean that every single player, every single person within the organization deserves a job, like Mr. Snyder, would do.
Pearl, I know you have a lot of insight on character for teams, and that's one of the big things for you. Do you know what I mean? And that was one of the main reasons why you became a fan of the Flyers, was because of the type of character and the way that the team played.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And look, I know there's other teams out there that do this, okay? But the success rate of those teams bringing in those type of retired players is, I mean, let's face it, we can rattle two guys' names, Joe Sakic and Yzerman, who were ex-players who are Hall of Fame ex-players, right?
Mm-hmm.
Winning players. I mean, they're household name players, but they're also household names when it comes to being general managers because they're doing it the right way, or for whatever reason, they know how to do it.
Right.
Okay. So they're the few and far betweens. So Pearlo, give me some take on all this, man. I know you have a lot of insight on a lot of other teams, and you've been following the Flyers for a long time, but you've also been analyzing things for a long time too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you mentioned that Hexdahl was in LA. There's another general manager that also was an ex-player that's doing a pretty good job in LA, and that's Rob Blake.
Yeah.
Right? And now you talk about smaller defensemen. I don't know what Hextall's. I think there's certain areas that maybe Hexdahl was blocked, maybe not. I don't know. But I can't belabor this point. Player development is terrible in Philadelphia. And to my point, you talk about smaller defensemen. LA is full of small defensemen.
Mm-hmm.
But all of them have a low body core, and all of them have a low center of gravity, so strong, super strong core.
Yeah,
and their defense is actually pretty fantastic. Jordan Spence is a new guy who's coming up and looks really good. 5'10". Durzee's only 6 feet. Anderson, Tobias Bjornford is a beast. He's 6 feet, 202, but he's only 6 feet for a defenseman. That's not that huge. And Michael Anderson, who's injured at the moment, Sean Walker, all of these guys are 5'11" and 6 feet, but all of them are fantastic. Were brought up with the development and conditioning and everything brought them to where they are right now. I'm not opposed to having, especially when you're drafting late, you're not going to quite often be able to get the big defenseman that can skate. But these kids, if you're going to be on a smaller defenseman, you got to be a rock in your conditioning. And I think that is where the problem was, more than the actual defenseman that he drafted. LA did it. Even Joe Sakic, a lot of his defensemen coming up are not that big. In fact, Joe Sakic, the defense for Joe Sakic isn't really that big. They have a lot of smaller defensemen on that team. So it's strength and conditioning, my friend. That's where it's got to change there, and they just seem stubborn to change it.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. The Flyers tend to look a certain way, but that the game is changing, and smaller players are being able to make that transition, where some of them were, scoring ungodly amounts of points in juniors and in the NCAA before, but were never drafted because they didn't fit a certain mold. But now that mold has changed, and oversize is talent. And these teams that are in the know and are in a forward way of thinking are signing players. Another great small diminutive defenseman that I wanted to see the Flyers sign was Michigan's free agent defender, Blankenberg.
Oh yeah. Didn't
Amazing.
he go to Columbus?
He went to Columbus. He just signed with Columbus. But you got to think, you got to think, who did he play with there? He played with Owen Power, and before him was Cam York. So not only could he handle the best the NCAA had to offer,
he played with some of the best too.
He played with the best because he was like an on ice coach for Mel, Michigan's coach. So, if Mel Pearson can really trust this guy to coach the best of the best, the cream of the crop that he has, and develop them and win so many games with them, I really think he could be a good pro one day. And for pennies on the dollar, $800,000, $900,000 in this grand scheme of things, it'd be worth a shot for sure when you look at this horrid defense the Flyers have currently. So, but getting back on topic here, it's this nepotism stems through every facet of the Flyers. When you look at coaching, you can go through. We already talked about Paul Holmgren. Bill Barber was there. Craig Berube, who left and has done well. Terry Murray, John Stevens, all have been Flyers bench bosses at one time or another. But when you really look at the Phantoms, it gets even worse. The Phantoms had John Paddock, Kerry Huffman, Nuckbar, Samuelson, Stevens, Berube again, and Ian LaPerriere. And that's the thing that really gives this away for me is LaPerriere. LaPerriere did a horrible job running the power play for the Flyers, but he was a Flyers guy. He sacrificed everything for the Flyers. He took pucks to the face and everything else. So the Flyers, I don't think the management didn't want to unnecessarily fire him. So what they do, they took a guy that wasn't a Flyers guy, and Scott Gordon, the Phantoms coach, and they said the Phantoms and him agreed to move on.
Mutually part ways, I believe.
Mutually part ways, yes.
Yeah.
Scott Gordon isn't coaching anywhere right now, but last season his team finished second in the North Division.
Yeah.
Pretty good considering the lack of talent that the Phantoms have. He was able to pull them together and get second in the North Division. And they won about 70% of their games. Now, why on earth would you fire a coach or agree to, mutually move on from each other to bring in LaPerriere, who has this team at times in the bottom of their division? I don't know, but I think it's because you took a guy that wasn't affiliated with the Flyers before, and moved him out to put your guy in there, and that's just the systemic nepotism that has been going on with this organization for so long.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. Pearlo, I think that we all agree, and I think Lance, you would either admit to, because there's going to be so many different positions that they're going to need to fill in this offseason. because Jones's contract is going to be up, so that's a backup goaltender. Are they going to be able to bring Ivan in because of the whole Russia situation? You know, how's that going to look and how's that going to work? What are they going to do with all this middle tier, barely AHL talent level of guys? Are they going to be able to package these guys up? Are they going to be able to get anything for them? Are they going to be able to do anything in the draft? The fact that Chuck Fletcher is still going to be running the show, to me, is problem number one. He is the one that created this mess. He's been given far too much time to take care of things, and all he's done is dig a deeper hole. Okay? Just my opinion here, folks. Just my opinion. Okay? Quite honestly, what I think is going to end up happening this year is in the summer, I think that Danny Briere is going to be named the general manager, and I think we're going to see the nepotism be perpetuated, and Chuck Fletcher is going to be named as the president of hockey operations, and Danny Briere is going to be named as the general manager. And I think that's going to happen this summer, and those two are going to be the ones responsible for what's going to happen. I am still not in any way, shape, or form liking the fact that Chuck Fletcher is part of any of the decisions going forward with this team. So but that's just my opinion. I've seen far too much of it. I'm ready to not see it anymore. Pearl, you got something to say about that?
I think it's possible that he doesn't have much to do with it now. If they are going to go with Briere is probably doing most of the decisions behind the scenes. Chuck Fletcher is simply there to hold the fort for all the things that he may do if they decide to make him president and all that stuff like that. My thing is, like, I like what the owner, and his name has escaped me right now. He owns the Bills in Buffalo. Why is his name escaped me? But I like what he did finally. He got rid of everything. And I think that's what Briere's got to do. They got to wipe this. He fired everyone.
Yes, please.
And then he took a couple people. Adams, of course, was one. He took a couple people and said, you know what? This is what he said. And this is kind of what happened in the Oilers land too, and what good owners will eventually swallow their pride and do and say, I'm not very good at this. So I like both of your characters. You go out and get guys that you think are going to be best for this, and I'm going to keep my trap shut. And that, I think, is I'm not going to say anything about Briere. He could be a young, super-minded kid, and maybe that's exactly what they're doing. Maybe they see a progressive mind in Briere, and they're going to go, you know what, Danny? Fire who you got to fire, wipe the slate clean, do what you think you need to do, get this. We obviously need to develop our players better, all of this stuff like this. We're not going to tell you what to do anymore. Throw away the key, off you go. That's what I would like to see happen. Chuck Fletcher can sit up there and, in the lion's den, I like to call it, with all the, have you ever heard of the Lions Club? Do you have that in the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's basically what the Philadelphia Flyers have been for a long time. A big Lions club where they just hung around and go, ho, 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 talk about their own selves, smoke cigars. You know what I mean? And say, hey, what are we going to do with this, like playing poker? And then every once in a while they come up with something that they're going to do with the team, and then they go back to drinking whiskey again. That's what it seems like be there. And they sit and then they just compliment each other on how wonderful they've been, their whole careers and lives and stuff like that. That's what, I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like is going on in Philadelphia.
No, man, I think you're preaching to the choir here a little bit on that.
Pretty spot on. Yeah, it's pretty spot on.
Okay.
Pretty spot on.
So you hire this Briere kid. I don't think he's going to be up there smoking cigars with all these guys and doing all that stuff. I think Comcast, is that right? Or like, it might be corporate, but every corporation has their wick where it stops, where the breaking point, and this hopefully is the breaking point where they realize that there has to be a complete change or they're going to lose sponsors.
Well, not only are they going to lose sponsors, Pearlo, but look, here's the other big thing too, right? You go to the games, Man, and I'm here to tell you, bro, it's ghost town there, right? There's
Well,
nobody.
that's why you're going to lose sponsors.
That's what I'm talking about, right? There's nobody there, right? You have to, when you have special games for Giroux, you have to give away tickets to get people to come to fill up the place. I mean, that's ridiculous. Okay, so man, I'll tell you what, I knew this show was going to be smoking, right? Yeah. And boy, was I spot on with that too, because we all have that same kind of mentality where we feel that there's so much that needs to happen with Philadelphia, and either the ownership and or coaching and or management is not seeing it, and or we don't know what's going on, but we really see there's a lot of other things that need to change. Lance, do you have any
Yeah, let me touch on Pearlo hit so many points that I'd like to comment a little bit on. So yeah, Danny Briere really has come in. He's been groomed, especially by the Flyers. He was sent back to. I did an article on it before. He was groomed by the Flyers after he retired. They told him to go back to school. He went to business school. He went to Wharton. All that good stuff.
Got his MBA and all that.
Got his MBA, all that good stuff to kind of groom him. They gave him a job managing in the ECHL. They've hired him as such to mentor. Even before they hired him, I would see him up there mentoring, being next to Chuck and Brent Flair, asking questions, blah, 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 blah. Once he was hired, I did notice some changes. There's been some player development coaches there talking to the guys that are injured. All this different little stuff is starting to change. So hopefully for the better in those points that we already pointed out. Now, we'll have to see, do the Flyers go back when they have to make a decision as a head coaching option? A lot of rumors have been Rick Tocchet is one of those names. I hope to God he's not. A great assistant coach in my mind, a great Flyers player for sure. Definitely one of those Paul Holmgren type players that, did everything black and orange the way, scored goals, but also beat people's brains in. But let's be honest here, folks. He's got a career NHL winning coaching percentage of just .475. That's not good. Not good at all. So let's hope that's not the choice here, in a sense. So if Danny does get that job, I hope he doesn't follow suit and hire all his old buddies or whatever like that. Hopefully he does take them to the cleaners. Because, not only has Chuck Fletcher come in and really screwed things up, he has really grabbed a hold of this whole nepotism thing and said, you know what, I got just the people for it. I mean, he brought in so many names of former players of Chris Stewart, Gabriel, Jerry Matthews, Nick Seeler. All those guys have helped him lose his job in Minnesota, but he still brought him here. And, hey, look at behind the bench, Mike Yeo and John Torchetti. I probably butchered that, but
nope, you said it right, Torchetti.
All right. But both of those guys were Minnesota Wild coaches. Brent Flair was his assistant there in Minnesota. So this nepotism thing is just spawning and grasping everything around it. So
it's like
now it's just
roots and getting worse.
It's getting worse. It's like a weed, I think. A fern or something. I don't know, but it's just horrid, and it needs to stop. For far too long, the Flyers have had this go on, and what I said in my article was, just because a player played amazing and did amazing things throughout their career does not mean that they're entitled to a job after retirement. Furthermore, considering the Flyers' lack of achievement over the years, my question is, why would management feel like choosing these people for coaching, development, recruiting staff, etc., from the cesspool that is the underperforming mediocrity that is the Flyers and has been the Flyers for so long. Why would they want to pull from that? I don't get it. To help build their future. Obviously hasn't worked in the past. Call me crazy here, guys, but shouldn't jobs go to the best qualified person? And maybe that doesn't mean a person that wore orange and black. I don't know.
I mean, you know what I'm saying, Pearlo, I think that we have our choice of coach, and we've seen what kind of the rumors are. Who would you like to see as coach for the Flyers?
I don't know what his name is, but if you look around the league, there is a pool of amazing coaches that have to be untapped. Turney in Arizona, absolutely brilliant signing by Arizona. You got in Florida, never coached before. Not Odette, I always forget his name, but Burnett, right? Never coached before, did play before. I would like them to go to the pools and bring in a fresh face that has never even seen the inside of a Philadelphia Flyers arena before. I want Coach Turney in Arizona is an absolute genius, and there's got to be more out there. Are we so stubborn to think that the only people that know how to do this is people that did it that have played, that have coached with another team before? Yeah. And I think that is the word that has prevented them from moving to where they need to go. And that goes down, it's been through the whole thing. The word is stubborn. There's way too much stubbornness in the Philadelphia Flyers organization. I think outside the box for a while. Go outside of your box, think something creative and new, and bring it in here into Philadelphia. You know what? We don't need to have to be the big bullies of the past, but we can still be intense and skilled and all of those things that we want to have, and do it in a way that's going to fit into this game today. But we have to get our minds out of the past and start looking towards the future. So who could do that better than somebody who only can see the future because they don't have a past?
Well, at least with the Flyers, right?
Even in the NHL period.
Right. That's what I mean. Right. Wow, there you have it, folks. What an awesome show. What a great panel. We had the Great Pearlo Wisdom join us from the NHL Pearlo Wisdom Show, part of the SteelFlyers All Sports Network. And Lance, we had another 2 great articles. You got any in the pipeline there, buddy?
I do. I don't want to give them out just yet. I have a mix of different notes I haven't really picked from, but I'm going to have some time off here, so hopefully I'll be able to write some more articles like I did this week. So
awesome, Pearl. I know you've been doing the show for the NHL Pearls of Wisdom. Why don't you tell the folks where we can find you and when we can see your great shows and where we can get you on your handle?
Search the Pearlo Wisdom Show, of course. Search Pearlo Wisdom on YouTube. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one there. And also search yourself up some Peyton on the radio.
Another member of the SteelFlyers All Sports Network.
Yeah, we do live streams together. Don't forget Off the Wall John, one of the greatest play-by-play guys on YouTube in any sport. It's amazing. Peyton on the radio as well. Him and I do together. And
those are amazing, by the way, man. You guys do a great job on those, man. You guys have great rapport. Those are really good games to watch.
Well, thank you for your kind words. But we're very passionate about it. And also, I got some. I do this fun trade video stuff and free agent video stuff that's kind of going out there right now. It's kind of going out well out there. It seems a lot of people are attaching to it and enjoying it. I enjoy it. So you can check out some of those videos on the Pearlo Wisdom Show as well.
For sure.
And Pearlo's NHL POW on Twitter if you're into that sort of thing.
For sure, man. There will be Frolic. If you are not following the Great Pearlo Wisdom, you are missing out on all of the Frolic that he deals out on a regular basis. So be sure to check him out. He's also part of all the great folks here on the SteelFlyers All Sports Network, along with Peyton on the radio, along with John from Off the Wall Hockey, and of course the JB and Steel Show, right? And the Pro Joe, right? And then also
Pro Joe.
The Hockey Writers Inc. Yeah. So we're all part of that great group. Lance, tell the folks there where we can get you, where we can find you.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at LNGBASSIST, the number's 39. You can read all my stuff at flyersnittygritty.com, steelflyers.com. You can catch this great show and all those listed by Pearlo and Steel on YouTube, and you can listen to us on every single avenue you can think of that holds a podcast. Just great to have you guys on with me, and love getting to sit down and talk some hockey with you guys. Thank you.
For sure, man. It's always great to be on with the Great Pearlo, and then Lance, all the great articles we get to talk about. And you can find me on Twitter at SteelFlyers52. You can follow all of us at SteelFlyers All Sports Network at SteelFlyers.com. Thank you all very much for checking out the Hockey Writers Inc. We will catch you all on the next episode. Thanks, Pearlo, for joining us. Thank you, Lance, for some more great articles, and we'll catch you guys all on the next time. Thank you very much.